Hey guys, TGCast Productions. For this GT Live video, I have a buy-in, customization, and review for the Grotti Brioso 300. This is another drip feed vehicle from the Chiropractic Heist update. So we're going to go ahead and first purchase this vehicle, as we always do with these videos. This vehicle can be purchased from the Southern San Andreas Super Autos site in game here, and it originally retails for $457,000, but it is free between December 22nd and December 30th. Let's go ahead and read the caption here before we purchase this vehicle. Grotti's designers always knew they were missing something vital. Sure, their compacts ticked all the boxes, knees by your chin, elbows out the window, but day after day they would return to the drawing board, certain there was one trick they'd yet to try. And then one beautiful genius whispered, smaller. That's how the 300 was born. So let's go ahead and purchase this vehicle, get into a pre-customized test drive, and then check out the customization after that. So let's go ahead and take a look at the pre-custom look of the Grotti Brioso 300. And this vehicle is based off the FIAT 500, specifically the earliest models. And I'll go a little bit into more detail about the real-life version of this vehicle and its brief history towards the end of this video. So let's go ahead and use the remote functions here to open up everything on this vehicle that can be opened up. You'll see here we have the doors, the hood, the trunk. Typically what you're going to have on a car or land vehicle. Most land vehicles you'll be able to open up. What's interesting is the trunk is in the front of the vehicle and the hood is in the back of the vehicle. And this is actually customization options that you'll see in the mod shop. That's actually how they're named. That the trunk is in the front, the hood is in the back. We have a really nice look at the engine, as you saw there too. So that is interesting. I believe even the real life version of this vehicle also had that feature where the engine was in the back of the vehicle. So that is very cool. Let's go ahead and get into the vehicle here. We have a very nice, luxurious interior. I believe the interior, for the most part, at least the dash part, is in other vehicles in GT Online. But nonetheless, it is a very nice, luxurious interior. So let's go ahead and take this car for a quick test drive here. And for the most part, with this first test drive, what I try to discover is there any really major red flags with the vehicle, anything that stands out, specifically regarding the performance. And, for the most part, the only really red flag is, if you try to make really quick turns at higher speeds with this vehicle, you're going to lose quite a bit of traction, maybe more than you typically would with some other vehicles. Even if you try to drift the vehicle, same thing. I wouldn't really recommend drifting this vehicle, but that was really the only red flag. And I would say that really goes under more of competitive performance. But the overall performance of the vehicle, just driving it around, is fine. There really wasn't any red flags I could discover there. Now, as far as the competitive performance is concerned, I do believe this vehicle is a below average performing vehicle competitively. As far as comparing this vehicle to other vehicles in the compact class in GT Online, I do believe this vehicle does perform below average when comparing to those other compact vehicles. And I'll talk a little bit more about that towards, a little bit later in this video when I get to the final review. And I think you guys will see where I'm coming from when I say I believe this vehicle is a below average performing vehicle, at least competitively. But that's really all I'll say for this first review here, or the pre-custom review here. Let's go ahead and get into customization, a short showcase, show you my final product, the vehicle. Then we'll go into the final review, brief background of the vehicle after that. So let's go ahead and check out the customization for the Grotti Brioso 300. And as I always do, I'll just mention a few things about the customization that stood out to me, and then I'll let you guys check out the rest of the customization if you so choose. So a number of different customization options you can add to this vehicle that I'd say are fairly unique. Just to mention them, or at least the ones that stood out to me, there's an engine block option you can add to this vehicle, such as a 6-cylinder engine upgrade, which I think is really, really cool. If you open up the hood of the vehicle, which in this vehicle it's actually in the back, you can get a really nice view of that, so that is really cool. You also have a number of roof options, such as opening up the roof, which is also really cool and pretty unique to this vehicle. I believe it actually brings out the real life version of this vehicle. into in-game here, because the real life version has some similar options like that that this vehicle is based off of. So that is really, really cool. And there's also some other options that aren't necessarily as unique, such as like adding different things to the roof, such as like maybe like a roof rack, or even adding things to the hood of the vehicle, like luggage. Definitely a little bit more unique, but there definitely are other vehicles in GT Online that have those options. So that is also really cool. Those are just sort of a few customization options that stood out to me for this vehicle. This vehicle also does have 10 unique liveries, which we've seen a number of other vehicles in GT Online have unique liveries to them. And it also does appear this vehicle has unique tires, at least in the sense that you cannot purchase these tires for other vehicles in GT Online from any of the mod shops. Something else I want to focus on as far as the customization concerned for this vehicle is the respray options. And specifically, there is a primary color option and a secondary color option. And one thing that bugs me about this vehicle, and I really wish Rockstar would have done this, is that both the primary color and the secondary color not only control a portion of the exterior color of this vehicle, but they also control a portion of the interior color of this vehicle at the same time. So essentially, whatever your exterior color is for your primary and secondary color, that's also going to be the same for a portion of the interior color. And typically for the interior color, usually Rockstar creates a trim color option. That way, your trim color, the interior color, is separate from your exterior color. And I really wish they would have done that. I really don't like how they merged that together. That's just more of my personal preference. But I wish they would have kept them separate. And what's even more interesting is in the Chiropractic Heist final, Rubio actually has his own Grotti Brioso 300 that spawns towards the main gate of the compound. And as I was escaping, and this footage is really quick here, but you notice actually the portion of the interior color is actually gray, and I actually believe that's controlled. That portion of the Grotti Brioso 300 is controlled by the secondary color. However, this vehicle is not the exterior color of the vehicle is not gray in any way. It's all the same color. So I'm not really sure how what Rockstar did here, but players clearly cannot do that, which is unfortunate. I really wish Rockstar would make that change to this vehicle, where you can make the interior color different from the exterior color. But again, that's just more of my own subjective preference. And the last thing I'll mention here regarding the customization that I thought was interesting with this vehicle is that the suspension options for this vehicle is actually a race suspension option, and that's a lot more rare for vehicles in GT Online. There are other vehicles in GT Online that do have a race suspension option, but it's not very common. In fact, as I was sort of going back and looking at a number of vehicles in GT Online and their suspension options, I realized how much of a difference there is between suspension options you have for some vehicles versus others. But I can tell you that specifically regarding the race suspension, that is a suspension option that isn't very common on a lot of GT Online vehicles. So that is just something else I found interesting for the Grotti Brioso 300. But in any case, that's pretty much everything I'll mention regarding the customization. Feel free to check out the rest of it if you so choose. We'll go ahead and get in the showcase after this. I'll show you my final product. We'll do our final test drive, as well as a little bit of background on the real life version of this vehicle.
Making decisions is stressful. Bodywork to match the driver. Do you need a drink? Bubbles or something? No rush at all. That'll stop you bouncing around. Stick to the speed limit. I'm joking, of course. They're bulletproof.
So here's my final product of my Grotti Brioso 300. I'll give you a full 360 view here. Also mention here some of the customization that I believe is worth mentioning that I added to this vehicle. Start out with the colors. For both the primary and secondary color, I added a metallic gasoline green. There's no livery on this vehicle. And then as far as other modifications are concerned, the ones that are worth mentioning is I did add a engine block, or the engine block upgrade that you could add, the 6-cylinder upgrade, and then I did add the race suspension, and then also for the hood I added the hood luggage. I mentioned the race suspension because I mentioned earlier in the customization that not too many vehicles GT Line have the race suspension, but I will leave a full list of all the customization I added to this vehicle in the description of this video. Now on to the final review for this vehicle. I mentioned earlier that I'd go into a little bit more detail in the final review of why I believe this vehicle is really, I guess, below average as far as the performance is concerned competitively in the compact class in GT Online. And you can see there one of the red flags I mentioned earlier, sort of the turning this vehicle. Now the snow obviously could have something to do with that to a point. Obviously the snow is going to affect the handling of really all vehicles in GT Online, but nonetheless, the turning of this vehicle may not necessarily be the greatest. But as far as it being below average overall in the performance or competitively performing in the compact class, I actually went back and looked at the stats for almost all of the compact vehicles in GT Online. In fact, there's not really a ton of compact vehicles in GT Online, which I didn't even realize. There's actually, I believe, a little over 10 compact vehicles in GT Online are in that class. And really, this vehicle has arguably the worst stats out of all the compact vehicles in GT Online, which is pretty unfortunate. I even show you side-by-side comparison here of the Grotti Brioso 300. Driving down the same road is the Dinka Blista Conjo, which is known as the fastest compact car in GT Online currently. And I know, obviously, I said this is a below average vehicle. Really, this is, comparing it to the Blista Conja, there really is no comparison, but I'm just sort of making the point here that this vehicle is not here to dominate. The Grotti Brioso 300 is definitely not a vehicle that is, made to compete really in GT Online. I would say it's much more of a show car, and I think even the real life version of this vehicle sort of supports that in a way, and what Rockstar maybe had imaged for this vehicle. But yeah, I mean, as far as like, the general performance of the vehicle, as I mentioned earlier, is fine, but competitively concerned, yeah, this vehicle is not really, going to be a competitive vehicle for the compact class. So at this point, to end off this video, as promised earlier, I'm going to go into a little bit of brief history about the real-life version of this vehicle, the Fiat 500, as well as specifically what model or models I believe the Grotti Brioso 300 is based off of. So to start off here, let's start with Fiat itself. Now, Fiat is an Italian car manufacturer, or at least originally it has Italian origin to it. I believe now Fiat is owned by Chrysler, but Fiat actually stands for Fabbrica Italiana Automobili Torino. Might be pronounced that a little bit incorrectly, but that is essentially what it stands for. It was founded by a few men at the turn of the century in 1899, one of those men being Giovanni Agnelli. Now, specifically regarding the Fiat 500, or as the Italians would refer to it as Cinquecento, which is 500 in Italian, there were a number of early models of the Fiat 500 that took place in the early 1900s. However, the Grotti Brioso 300 is specifically modeled after, I would say, a couple of the generations that were released from 1957 to 1975. Now, in regards to the Grotti Brioso 300, there is a few generations or variant of the Fiat 500 released from 1957 to 1975 that I believe that the Grotti Brioso 300 references. Specifically, I would say two variants or generations. The first of which I believe is the Nova Sport, which the Nova was actually the first Fiat 500 to be produced at the end of the 50s into the early 60s, and there was a sport version of that vehicle eventually produced. And given the upgraded engine that you can add, the 6-cylinder engine block you can add to the Grotti Brioso 300, the Nova Sport had a more powerful engine to it, so I think that would represent the more powerful engine. In fact, I don't even know if really any of the Fiat 500s had 6-cylinder engines in them, but nonetheless, the more powerful engine that you could add to the Grotti Brioso 300 would represent or reference the more powerful engine in the Nova Sport. And besides that, there's also some like rally bumpers and race liveries that you can add to the Grotti Brioso 300 that I would say also reference the Nova Sport. Now, the other is variant or generation of the Fiat 500 released between or from 1957 to 1975 that I believe the Grotti Brioso 300 represents is the Lusso, which actually in Italian means luxury. The reason why I believe that is that the Grotti Brioso does have a fairly luxurious interior in it, and that was sort of like a trademark of the Lusso. It had a very luxurious interior, and it also had, I believe, the Fiat badge. It might have been one of the first Fiats, or even maybe only Fiats that featured the badge on the front of the vehicle. And you could see on the Grotti Brioso 300, we have the Grotti badge on the front. So I do also believe that the Lusso referenced with the Grotti Brioso 300. So the last couple of things I'll mention about the Fiat 500 is that the Fiat 500 was meant to be an affordable car. Now, there were ones that were produced before 1957 or the ones that were produced before 1957 and 1975. Those ones are definitely meant to be affordable. I believe even the ones that the Grotti Brioso 300 represents, which are the ones that were produced from 1957 to 1975. I believe those were also meant to be affordable cars for the population. But given that, because there were so many of these produced, because they're meant to be affordable to the population, it isn't really too difficult to get your hands on one of these today, although you will be paying obviously a lot more or a bit more than what you would have paid back then for these cars. There are also modern Fiat 500s that began being produced in 2007 and pretty much run up to current day. Now, unfortunately, the Fiat 500 actually may be discontinued as of 2020, so Fiat may have cut the Fiat 500 line from their car manufacturer company, unfortunately, but nonetheless, that is a little bit of history about the Fiat 500, Fiat really in general, as well as what I believe the Grotti Brioso 300 is based off of. In any case, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it extremely beneficial. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share it, and as always, have a great day.